dream that there was a statue. And in the statue, it had a golden head. It had an upper body of silver, an abdomen of brass, legs and waist of iron, and then down to iron and clay, right? And as Daniel had this dream revealed to him after praying with Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, they had prayed and God revealed the dream, and Daniel had already been gifted with interpreting dreams and visions. So he was able to go before King Nebuchadnezzar and say, hey, I know no one would have known this because only God can tell you the truth. And then he reveals the dream and he reveals the interpretation of the dream. So now even though Nebuchadnezzar, he wanted to honor Daniel and he brought incense and brought big, not really an offering, but an oblation, a part of an animal that's a sacrifice before Daniel, but he gave all glory to the God of Daniel. He's essentially saying, hey, Daniel, worship God, the God that you worship. I don't know how to worship him, but these worship are because he's revealed this to you. So does that mean Nebuchadnezzar converted to Judaism? No, it does not. Does that mean he thinks that God is the only God? No, he does not, right? He just thinks this is a very powerful God that's revealed things to Daniel. And again, when he heard this dream, okay, so he heard that, wait a minute, my kingdom is going to be replaced. Now, what would he have to do? What would the statue have to look like for the kingdom of Babylon to remain true forever?
All gold.
It'd be all gold, right? You couldn't have a multi-mixed metal, which each one represents a kingdom. He wants to see that perhaps, maybe, if he could convince the gods of Babylon to change the future that the God of Israel has now revealed to him. So maybe if he made this huge statue and could gather enough worship for the gods of Babylon, they might be strengthened to give overruling to the God of Israel. Does that make sense? At least it makes sense in his mind, obviously not to us, right? So he's not going to duplicate the statue. He's going to make a different one, right? So we're going to see that this chapter, one of my favorite chapters in the Bible, because it is a picture of what? Does anyone give me an idea? Who I haven't told already? What is this chapter a picture of?
Of Jesus.
Jesus, that's always a good answer. This chapter is the Antichrist. Okay, this chapter could be taken right out of the book of Revelation. All right, and there's so many things that you can pull out of this chapter. I can promise you this, I will not get them all. Okay, but it's very, very interesting chapter. So let's start with Daniel chapter 3, verse 1. Nebuchadnezzar, the king, made an image of gold, whose height was 80 cubits, and the breadth thereof 6 cubits, and he set it up in the plain of Dura, in the province of Babylon. Does anyone remember what the spiritual evil capital of the world is compared to from the book of Revelation? Babylon. Mystery Babylon, right? So here we have in the middle of Babylon, we have the world leader trying to prevent or change the prophecies, trying to prevent the reign of Christ, that rock cut without hands that destroyed the weak statue. He's trying to rework prophecy. He's trying to change the future, right? And how interesting is it that his number is 60, the type of the statue, how tall it is 60 times 6. You ever hear any sixes anywhere else? Anybody else have any sixes associated with their name? It's the number of man, right? Do you guys remember who else had a bunch of sixes aside from the Antichrist?
Solomon.
I was born in 1966. Is that a bad sign?
Oh my goodness. You need to go change your birthday. No, but if you actually think of Goliath, how many fingers did he have on each hand? 6. How many toes? 6. How much did his shield weigh? I mean, everything about him is 6, 6, 6, 6. There's a lot of types of the Antichrist. And you see one of them here, right? In this statue that he's building. So it begins again. Start looking at the similarities between this chapter and the coming time of the Antichrist and the tribulation. Now, history tells us that there was a revolt against Babylon. So the Babylonian Empire, of course, it covered many kingdoms, and every little while, some of them would rebel. Israel rebelled a few times, and Nebuchadnezzar had to send his general to squash it. So there was a revolt in about 596 BC, and you can actually read about it on some tablets that are currently on display in the British Museum. So Nebuchadnezzar, he goes, he crushes the rebellion, and he wants to bring the whole world back in line and mandate their worship of Babylon's God. And of course, he makes this huge statue. Now, by the way, when we compare this to the Antichrist, we see that his number was 666. We talked about that. But do you remember what the false prophet tries to convince everyone to worship? An image, a statue, or a AI, or whatever it may be, of the Antichrist. So they try to make people worship the image, just like we see here, Nebuchadnezzar trying to make people worship the image. Okay? So we'll see now, do the similarities continue? Well, verse 2. Then Nebuchadnezzar, the king, sent to gather together the princes, the governors, the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image which Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Then the princes, the governors, the captains, the judges, the treasurers, the counselors, the sheriffs, and all the rulers of the provinces were gathered together unto the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So isn't it interesting? All the kings of the world, all of the authorities, those who would imprison those who disagreed, and all of the financial leaders of the world were going to come in line behind this king. Does that sound familiar at all?
Yeah.
Do we remember when the Antichrist, the false prophet, and the dragon all send out demons that look like frogs, these evil spirits that convince the whole world to unite, so that he can say no one can buy or sell without my statement? That everyone must follow me, the whole world, all their leaders would unite? Do you see how that's happening here as well? So then we go on. Verse 4. Then a herald cried aloud, "To you it is commanded, O people, nations, and languages, that at what time you hear the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, the sackbut, the psaltery, the dulcimer, and all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up." And I say Nebuchadnezzar, that's the way I pronounce it, because in Arabic it was Nebuchadnezzar. But here I know you say Nebuchadnezzar. I switch back and forth. and whoso falleth not down and worshipeth shall the same hour be cast in the midst of a burning fiery furnace. Well, I hope you like music, because when the music played, you had to kneel down. You had to bow down and worship the image of gold. And again, head to toe gold. And what happens if you don't worship the image of gold? You're instantly killed. What happens whenever you don't worship the image of the Antichrist? You're instantly killed. Right? It's the same idea. Revelation 13:15, that's where that comes from. It says, "And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed." You're instantly killed. You guys see the similarities so far? I mean, it's pretty blatant once you know it's there. Before, it's just kind of an interesting story. But you can see this. This is like a preview to Revelation. So now we get to verse 7. He says, "Therefore at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, the sackbut, the psaltery, and all kinds of music, and all the people, the nations, the languages, fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Wherefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews. They spake and said to King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, O king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, the sackbut, the psaltery, and the dulcimer, and all kinds of music, shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth, that he should be cast in the midst of a burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar in his rage and fury commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they brought these men before the king. So these people, the people of the world, seek out anyone who refuses to bow down to the image of the beast. Do you remember what the Antichrist does? He wants to see everyone who doesn't worship him be killed. Anyone who doesn't take the mark of the beast, or worship his name, or worship the image. Okay? So isn't it interesting? Subtle. This one's a little more subtle than the other ones. But how many people or leaders refuse to obey the Antichrist in his kingdom? You guys remember how many he puts down?
You mean the three nations?
The three nations, right? The three kings refuse to submit. How many people refuse to submit to Nebuchadnezzar here? It's three. It's just it's a little subtle, right? But it's interesting. And that comes to Daniel 7:24. It actually says later in this book. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them. And he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. 3 of them are going to turn against him, and he's going to put them down. That's kind of what we're seeing here. Now, why do I say they were 3 kings? Because they were some of the chief men in Babylon, right? So these men, they refused to obey Nebuchadnezzar. That doesn't just talk about their bravery, but also talks about fear, okay? They understood something that many people don't understand today. You don't need to fear them that can only destroy the body. There's no one to fear. What can they do? In this life early, this life's going to end one way or another. And in 100 years, it doesn't matter. As long as you may live, in 100 years, it's not going to matter. But what you do need to fear is one who can destroy not just the body, but also the soul in hell, right? And God said, you do not bow before an image. That's all over the Bible. That's also something that certain denominations today might want to take heed of. In Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, it talks about you do not kneel before any image. That's worship. You do not pray to anyone but God. That is worship. And you could go on and on. Now, a little bit of outside the Bible. There was a 5-sided prism found in Babylon. And in that 5-sided prism, it actually lists 50 heads of state, 50 officials that were under Nebuchadnezzar. All right? And among those, there were the names Adinabu, which is pronounced in Aramaic, Abednego, which is kind of cool, right? You can actually see their names outside the Bible. You also have Hanunu, which is also transliterated from a Hebrew word, Hananiah. So Hananunu is the Babylonian version of his Hebrew name, not Azariah, or not Hananiah, let me think. Abednego was Azariah. Mishael was, trying to remember which one was which. I think it was Mishael was Meshach. That's right. Mishael was Meshach. That's right. So Azariah. So and then we have the last name, Meshulam Marduk, which is the same name as Mishael Marduk. Which again, so their names outside the Bible have been confirmed as some of the leaders of Babylon. Right? Now remember, it was Daniel who actually convinced Nebuchadnezzar to make them heads of state. That was from Daniel chapter 2 at the very end of the chapter. It says in verse 49, Daniel requested of the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel sat in the gate of the king. So they were very high officials, but Daniel was the highest right next to the king. Okay? So now we get to verse 14 and 15. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Now, if you be ready, that at what time you hear the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, the sackbut, the sackbut, the psaltery, the dulcimer, and all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the image which I have made, well. But if you worship not, you shall be cast that same hour into the midst of a burning, fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? This is the same Nebuchadnezzar that said, I am going to chop you up and make your houses a dunghill. And he sentenced them that minute to all the wise men, not even the ones there. He's not known for his calmness. He's not known to make slow decisions. No, he's quick to anger, right? But do you notice that he must have really thought highly of these people to give them another chance? He's not a king of second chances. But he's like, I'm going to give you another chance. You can get out of this. I don't want you to die, is what he's telling them. But I also have made a law and you're going to follow it. Well, let's see if his intimidation tactics work. Verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. Think of the boldness. It's like, buddy, I ain't scared of you. And I'm not choosing my words carefully. Think of the boldness that they're talking. Probably looking over one of these furnaces meant to accept sacrifices, and you're going to be the next sacrifice. Would you be that brave? You don't have to answer that. But the point is, can you imagine being there? He's like, we are not even going to choose our words carefully. Verse 17. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thy hand, O king. Think of what they just said. He is able, and he's going to save us from you. But then they say, not necessarily by saving our lives. They knew there was a God in eternity, and they knew that they served him. And he says in verse 18, he says, but if not, if we're not spared, if our lives are not spared, but if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Now remember, this is not some back of the room quiet conversation. All the leaders of the known world are there during this huge ceremony. And here we got these three guys who have already caused quite a commotion. And everyone's ready, like flipping out. And he goes, and they go up before him and says, hey, we're going to tell you how it is. Kill us if you must, but God can save us. And if he doesn't, we're still not going to serve you. That's some bold words. I don't know that I would be that bold, but I pray that I will be when the time comes. If the time comes, and the way things are going, it probably will. But the fact is, we need to be bold for Christ. We need to be bold like these men were bold. And it says in verse 19, then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Remember, first he came up with pity. Now he's just angry. He's spitting fire. Therefore he spake. He didn't even wait for the music, right? He says he spake and commanded they should heat up the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. 7 times the fuel, 7 times the fire. He could not believe they rejected his generous offer. And he doesn't need to hear anymore. He doesn't need the music to play anymore. He just wants them to be made an example of, right? He wants it to burn and burn hot. Doesn't that sound like the people who refuse to take the mark of the beast? They want them dead. They want them dead now. So here they're given this one final option to do so, to turn and to worship this image. And they reject. They said, no, it's more important to me that my soul is safe than that my body is safe. So what happens? Verse 20. And he commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, their hosen, and their hats, and their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's commandment was urgent, and the furnace exceeding hot, the flame of the fire slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down, bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. And that's the end of our story. Oh no, it's not the end of our story. I'm sorry. Okay, so remember Job, right? What he said. He said, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. These guys are here living it out. Okay? So we go to verse 24. He says, Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished in today's language, and rose up in haste, and spake, and said to his counselors, Did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? And they have no hurt. And the form of the 4th is like the Son of God, or a son of the gods, depending on your version. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace, and spake, and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you servants of the Most High God, come forth, come hither. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, this is hilarious, they came forth out of the midst of the fire. And the princes, governors, and captains, and king's counselors, being gathered together, we knew they were all there, they saw these men, upon whose bodies the fire had no power, nor was a hair of their heads singed, neither was their coats changed, nor the smell of fire had passed on them. They were willing to die. They had faith, I would argue, maybe even bigger than a mustard seed. They trusted in God. And did God come through? Absolutely. Okay? So I think that is something to be said about our faith these days, right? A lot of times we want to have faith, but all of a sudden, if things are a week behind, or we got into a big fight with someone, we immediately fall into despair and despondency, right? Oh, I lost this, I'm missing that, I wish I had this. These folks, they're ready to go to the grave. And of course, the ultimate thing, now they're going to be a witness to everyone who's there. Which is another great. What does it mean to die to yourself? We're willing to die. We all want to wait for that glorious moment where somebody points the gun and says, deny Jesus Christ. And we're going to say, I give all glory to Jesus. That's all we want to see. That's how we want to go out, right? Mm-hmm. But what about dying to yourself?
It's like denying all of your fleshly desires, like what your flesh would want. You die to that.
Yeah, so denying your flesh, dying to yourself, the things that you want. What's that?
It's like baptism.
Yes, dying and rising again with Christ. So the point is, are you willing to die to yourself? If you're willing to die in front of the crowds, right, to give glory to Jesus, are you willing to take those parts of yourself, those selfish parts, the things that glorify me, and let them die so that I can glorify Jesus Christ? Sometimes Christians need to be thrown into the fire. Sometimes they need to see God working in their lives. They need to have their hip taken out of joint. They need to have their health fail. Sometimes. I'm not saying all the time, and I don't wish that upon anyone. But the fact is, God will humble us sometimes so that we can stand. If you haven't been there yet, probably coming. Maybe not. Hope not, but it's probably what's going to happen because God will use it for your good.
I mean, I just said to somebody the other day, I was like, I texted, she's young, and she's always putting all of her woes on Facebook, and then saying, oh, I'm not going to be on Facebook because everybody told me not to be on Facebook, I shouldn't share so much. So I texted her, and I was like, you know what? I said, did you know this about me, this about me, this about me, this about me? I said, my life has been a sad country song for a couple of years now. I said, but I bet you didn't know, did you? Mm-hmm. She goes, no, I'm so sorry, you can talk to me. I said, that's not the point. The point is, God will take that and use it. And He'll bring you back into the fold. Right, and you just don't need to share it on Facebook all the time. That's right, yeah. Because honestly, what are you going to get when you share things on social media and share them out for public? You're looking for affirmation of you feeling sorry for me. Mm-hmm. You know what Jesus says? He says that, again, this is through the words of David, that the rod and the staff of the shepherd comfort you. They don't always feel good. Okay? I don't know if you've ever been hit with a rod because you're walking off the side of a cliff and you get smacked, get back over there. Sometimes you need that. And sometimes, when it says goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, sometimes you don't see it coming. But that doesn't mean it's not coming. Sometimes it is following you. And what we need to do is be wise enough to actually follow the shepherd. Let him lead us and not be foolish. So up to this point, we see the 3 companions of Daniel. This is the first point, by the way, where they show faith themselves.
We saw the three companions of Daniel so far have been riding the coattails of Daniel. It was Daniel who purposed in his heart to follow God, to not corrupt himself with the practice of the Babylonians. It was him that negotiated with the chief of the eunuchs. It was him that negotiated with their supervisor and said, please, test us for 10 days. Put that challenge up there. It was him that was given the ability to interpret dreams and gathered his companions together to pray, to have this Bible study, to this prayer meeting, I should say, to find out the dream of the king. And it was him who raised them up. They went along with him. But sometimes, again, they got this perspective by facing the fiery furnace. They walked in not knowing if they would survive, but they knew they were honoring God. The only question that we need to ask about anything we do, when you leave this meeting tonight, you need to ask yourself, in what I'm about to do, am I going to be honoring Jesus Christ? If the answer is no, then don't do it. It's that simple. I know it's simple to say, sometimes hard to do, but it's that simple. Am I honoring Jesus Christ? Not what do I want, what am I trying to do, is what I'm doing. When you pay your bills, is it honoring Christ? Yes, I made an agreement with this company that I'm going to use their service and I'm going to pay them. That would be honoring Christ. You can get away with things, but if it's not honoring Christ, don't do it. So how important is honoring Christ in your life today? Question for you to go through. Yeah. So then we get to verse 28 through 30. It says, Then Nebuchadnezzar spoke and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who had sent his angel and delivered, and angel just means his messenger, and delivered his servants that trusted in him, and have changed the king's word, and yielded their bodies, that they might not serve nor worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree that every people, nation, and language which speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut into pieces, and their houses shall be made a dunghill, because there is no other God that can deliver after this sort. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. I chuckle because I can only imagine these Chaldeans who keep trying to get these people killed, and every time they do, they get promoted. It's like, what in the world? So Nebuchadnezzar, he changed his own law because he had the evidence he had seen that this God was powerful. He brought him up to the level of the gods of the Babylonians. He didn't make him the only God. Again, he didn't make God his God, not yet. But he said that this God deserves at least as much honor as my God. Everyone had to worship my God. Well, everyone also cannot speak anything against this God, because clearly he's a powerful God and he can interact with this world. That's unique among the gods that they believed in. Obviously, there's only one God. But the God that can actually interact with this world. So many Christians act like we serve an impotent God. They act like our God cannot provide for what I need. Pray for me. I'm going to go deal with my problems. No, we prayed for you. We gave it to God. Anything that happens from here on out, good or bad, is by his allowance. If you've truly submitted it to him, right? These people trusted in the power of God. Nebuchadnezzar had not yet. And those who plotted against him, now they're on the bad side, right? The Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they're at the higher level now. So, we see, again, the trials. We've seen this picture of the tribulation in this chapter. You guys have seen the comparison, right? And all of it's recorded here in the book of Daniel for us to learn and to see the picture. But there's one question that anyone reading this chapter should ask. What is that question?
How hot was it?
How hot was it? It's 7 times hotter than it was before. Okay, so now what is the question that you ought to be asking reading in Daniel chapter 3?
My thing is would I be willing to do that? Would I be willing to stick my head in the guillotine when it comes time? Am I going to just step right up and there it is, boys, have at it? Or am I going to be a big old scaredy cat?
I think we're all big talk till it's rubber hits the road, right?
Yeah.
But there's another question though.
My
Sorry, go ahead.
question is, this this is my question, and whether it's what you're gonna ask or not. My question is, it's an observation. Nebuchadnezzar didn't believe until he saw it. Like, we're supposed to have faith just based on faith, just by saying, Jesus died for me.
Right.
And Nebuchadnezzar had to see it. So that's my observation, is why? Why did it take him so long to
Well,
figure
well,
that out?
Where it was right in front of him?
Yeah.
What was amazing about that though is he did see it, and what did he
Yes,
say?
did.
And then why do I see one like the Son of Man
Right,
walking
that's
by?
true too. He said he saw this, so how did he even know? So he knew the.
He knows that it was someone supernatural there. But here's my contention. And you may disagree with this 100%. I believe you have seen the evidence of God. I believe all of us have seen it. That we are so desensitized and we blind ourselves to it. We explain it away. We explain the provision of God away. But I believe every human that's ever walked the earth has seen the miracles of God. And even myself, I just don't see it. Oh, this is just natural occurrences. Yeah, why wouldn't a seed become a massive tree and produce more seeds? No miracles here. Like, what? I mean, that's just one simple example, right? And that's not just talking about my life specifically. But I still want to get to one question. Well, there should be an obvious, glaring question in this book of Daniel, chapter 3.
I don't know.
Give us a hint.
In the book of Daniel,
Something to do with Daniel.
chapter 3.
Where's Daniel?
Thank you! I appreciate it, Bill. Where is Daniel? Okay? Where is Daniel? Where is the main character of the book who is second in command of the Babylonian Empire? Where is this guy? Right?
Why did they cast Daniel into the fire?
That's a great question. Why was Daniel not even there? Why was he not there when Nebuchadnezzar got this brilliant idea to make a golden statue and says this? I mean, where is he? He is, again, the second most powerful man and is very conspicuously absent. Well, wasn't it interesting? Not saying they didn't have it,
Realize that.
but isn't it interesting that up through the first 2 chapters, they rode his coattails. Even though they may have had faith, they were never presented as the ones with the faith, his companions. It was Daniel who had faith. And isn't it interesting that when the tribulation comes, the guy that already had faith was removed from the picture? Now we don't know where he is, right? He's probably somewhere else in the kingdom. But isn't it interesting that he doesn't even say, while I was in Shushan visiting the Persians, while I was in the, doesn't even mention himself. It's almost as if you could say he was forcibly taken. What was the Greek word for that? Rapturo. What was the English word for that? I think you get what I'm getting at, right? The idea is, I believe this chapter is just picture after picture after picture of what's coming.
Of the rapture.
The rapture would be part of it, the Antichrist, the coming kingdom, and the judgment and the image. I mean, there's so much here, right? But again, isn't it interesting? I believe Daniel is symbolic of the church, of the bride of Christ, being removed before this time of judgment comes. And again, the absence of the church is blatantly conspicuous, right? All through the tribulation. When we get to heaven, there's only 2 groups of humans there. There's the 24 elders and those killed during the tribulation. One of those got to be the church. Which is it? I mean, right? There's not many options here. So we don't have to wonder. And this is what lately in the world today, there's all kinds of Christian people who I respect who have been saying, oh, there's no rapture. Oh, the rapture is some new idea. It only came up a couple hundred years ago. Really? I bet you I could show you where it came up thousands of years ago. I could even find it in the Bible. And there are numerous passages, not the least of which in the letters to the 7 churches, especially the last 4, Jesus says, I am going to return, and I'm going to either spit you out of my mouth, cast you into great tribulation, keep you from the hour of temptation that is going to come on the whole world. And he's going to say, some of you will walk with me in white, some of you will not. That's kind of strange for him to say if that was the second coming. He talked about coming and doing something with these people, either taking them or leaving them behind, if they're saved or unsaved. They're part of the bride or they are not, right? So the point is, guys, these pictures are everywhere. And that's why, again, whether or not they were faithful, it is clear, if you go back and read the first 2 chapters, Daniel was the only one living by faith, at least the way it's presented. And he's the one that's completely absent when the judgment comes. I do not believe, personally, that anything in the Bible, whether it's in there or left out of there, is done so by accident. I believe it is all done with purpose, with intent, and to show us something. And that should be the very first question. I mean, we're not kids. If we were kids and read this, our first question would be, where's Daniel? Like, what happened to Daniel? He's the guy that's supposed to be running the show here. But anyways, just a lot of interesting stuff. We'll end it there. Any other final comments, questions, anything on Daniel chapter 3?
I don't know, but you blew my mind, because I never ever caught that.
It's really, it's weird, right? But thank you, Bill, for finally asking the question. All right. Anything else?
Where's Daniel?
Yeah.